Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is part 3 of a vivarium build series. I'm James and this is Jerry. And Jerry and I are very excited today because in this video we're going to be adding plants. And I love plants. It's probably the most exciting part of building any vivarium, because it's that time when the whole thing starts to take shape and come alive. And so stay with me and I'll be back and we'll get started planting. And here are some of the plants that I've chosen for this vivarium, along with my sweet girl Luna, who's looking up at me for permission to eat these plants, and I'm not going to let her do that. And on the top left, you have a Alsobia dianthiflora, which is a lace flower. And to the right of that, on the top, you have a heartleaf fern. And then to the right of that, you have Peperomia pepper spot. And there on the right side is a pretty large clump of creeping Jenny. And in the middle on the left is a strawberry begonia. And to the right of that is a trailing watermelon begonia. And on the bottom there left, you have a blue star fern and then some bromeliads. And I'm going to start by mounting the bromeliads, and you'll see on the end of the bromeliads is a stem, or a little piece of a stem that's called a stolon. And what I'm doing is I will either glue onto the wood, or I'll use a small pair of scissors and poke a hole into the background. And I put a couple drops of super glue onto the end of that stolon, and then just place it into the spot where I want it. And now that I have the bromeliads mounted, I'm going to start planting the other plants and working from the top down and the back forward. And right here I have a cutting from a Monstera vine, which I just took from my houseplant collection, and you can see that I dipped it in some rooting hormone. And you don't have to worry about the rooting hormone. It's not going to have any kind of harmful effect for the inhabitants of this vivarium. I've split the creeping Jenny into two parts, and I'm going to plant one of those in the back corner and one of those towards the back underneath this piece of wood. This is a cutting from a philodendron. The type is called Brazil. It has the light green part of the leaf in the middle, and I've taken that as a cutting from my house plants and also put the rooting hormone on that. I'm putting it in the back, and I want it to climb up and attach itself to the background. So what I'm doing here is I've used a paper clip and just broken off the end of it to make kind of a staple and pushing that into the background to hold that in place until the air roots start holding that onto the wall. adding some cuttings of Saginella, which is spike moss, which is actually not moss. It's not a fern either, even though it looks kind of like a fern and grows kind of like a moss. And I took those cuttings out of my one of my other vivariums, and it roots really easily and makes a good ground cover. And now I can start adding moss. And this is basically just moss that is field collected from a woods that is near my house. Really good spraying. Okay, we have all of our plants in, and now it's time to add some bioactivity. And the first step in that is going to be to add some leaf litter. And the leaf litter is important. It's going to eventually break down and provide food for the plants and some nutrition for the biofauna. And I'm just sprinkling it in wherever I see some, the substrate exposed or an empty spot. And now we're going to add our Microphona, which in this case are springtails and isopods. There was already some springtails in the charcoal that I put underneath the substrate, so I don't need that many. I get my springtails from Josh's Frogs, and then I culture them myself, and I'll be doing a video about that in the future. Okay, and we're going to add our isopods, which are basically what people know as roly-poly bugs that they played with when they were kids. You can buy all kinds of isopods online. There's just lots and lots of different species. You can get different colors. You can get fancy ones. They're just going to go into that leaf litter and substrate, and you're almost never going to see them. So I just go out into the woods and collect my own isopods. That's always worked fine for me. They're going to do fine in this tropical environment, even though I'm in a temperate environment here in Indiana. And I replace the isopods, refresh the isopods and springtails maybe every couple months or so. But I'm always surprised if I pick up a leaf or a rock. You can find them if you come in at night and put a little light on the bottom of the tank. You can often see some isopods crawling around, and they do a good job of eating all the waste. They help break down the leaf litter and the animal's poop. Okay, and this is it. But we are not finished yet. We have one more step to complete, and that is to let this vivarium cycle. And what you might see is a bloom of mold that will form that will look like a white fuzzy stuff growing. You might also see some mushrooms or other fungi. If you see that, don't worry, that's all fine. That's exactly what you want, and during this time the microfauna will hopefully start reproducing and forming a self-sustaining colony. The plants are going to root themselves in, and This process can take several weeks. Some people recommend a month, if not 2 months. And this is when most people are going to be the most impatient. You've just built this vivarium and you're excited about putting the inhabitants in that are going to live there. But trust me, for the long-term success of this vivarium, for it to really become a self-sustaining system, you want to give it that time to cycle. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I think it's beautiful. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. If you did, do me a favor and hit the like and subscribe button, ring the notification bell so you can be notified when new videos are available. And stay tuned for our final episode in this vivarium build series, and we'll introduce the inhabitants to their new home. And until then, I look forward to seeing you real soon.